All rise for the Honorable Judge Richard Harmon. The bailiff's voice echoed through courtroom 12B of the Suffolk County Courthouse, a space that had witnessed countless dramas over its 70-year existence. The room fell silent as the distinguished figure in black robes entered, his silver hair and practiced scowl creating an immediate atmosphere of authority. At 62, Judge Harmon carried himself with the confidence of a man who had spent 3 decades determining the fates of those who stood before him. Among those waiting in the gallery that Tuesday morning was Maya Washington, a woman whose appearance betrayed nothing of her importance. At 36, she sat quietly in a simple charcoal pantsuit, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun, observing the proceedings with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. To any casual observer, she was just another spectator, perhaps a concerned relative or a law student studying court procedures. Few would have guessed her true purpose. Case number 47829, Commonwealth v. Darryl Jenkins, the clerk announced, as a young black man was led in from a side door. Barely 20, Darryl's shoulders slumped under the weight of the charges against him. Accused of a series of car thefts in an affluent neighborhood, he faced potential years behind bars. His public defender, Lisa Chen, stood beside him. Despite the dark circles under her eyes from an overloaded case schedule, her posture was determined. "Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. We're requesting dismissal based on illegal search procedures and mishandling of evidence by the arresting officers." Judge Harmon's expression shifted from boredom to barely concealed amusement. "Ms. Chen, another one of your constitutional violation claims? How refreshing." His sarcasm cut through the courtroom, earning chuckles from several officers waiting to testify. Maya leaned forward slightly, her expression unchanged but her attention intensifying. "Your Honor, I've submitted documentation showing clear violations of my client's Fourth Amendment rights. The search of his apartment was conducted without proper—" "Yes, Judge Harmon interrupted with a dismissive wave. "I've reviewed your motion. Quite imaginative, but ultimately unconvincing." Lisa persisted. "Sir, the evidence log shows a 12-hour gap in the chain of custody. Furthermore, my client's alibi is corroborated by multiple witnesses, including Judge Harmon's gavel struck the sound block." Counsel approached the bench. As Lisa moved forward, Maya quietly stood and made her way to the gate separating the gallery from the court floor. The bailiff moved to intercept her, but she whispered something that made him hesitate. "Ms. Chen," the judge began, his voice low but carrying in the hushed courtroom, "let's not waste the court's time. Your client's prior record speaks for itself. These neighborhoods have been terrorized, and someone needs to be held accountable." "Judge Harmon," Maya's voice rang out clearly as she pushed through the gate, "I believe you'll want to hear what I have to say before proceeding." The judge looked up, irritation flashing across his face. "Madam, this is my courtroom. You can't just—" "My name is Special Agent Maya Washington," she continued, reaching inside her jacket. "United States Secret Service, Financial Crimes Task Force." She produced her credentials, the gold badge catching the fluorescent light. "And I have evidence that directly impacts this case." Judge Harmon's laughter died in his throat. The courtroom fell silent. 6 months earlier, Maya Washington had been sitting in the sterile conference room of the Secret Service's Boston field office, reviewing surveillance photos spread across the table. What had begun as an investigation into a credit card fraud ring had evolved into something more complex, a sophisticated operation that might involve money laundering through luxury car purchases and resales. "We're looking at a pattern of high-end vehicles being purchased through straw buyers, then quickly resold with falsified documentation," explained her partner, Agent Derek Salvatore, pointing to a chart showing transaction flows. "The money trail suggests connections to criminal organizations in 3 states." Maya nodded, studying the faces in the photographs. "And the buyers are predominantly young men with no visible income to support these purchases." "Exactly. They're recruited, paid a few thousand to put their names on paperwork, then disappear from the picture. Classic manipulation of vulnerable individuals." Director Helen Cho entered the room, her expression serious. "Washington, Salvatore, there's a new development. We've identified a potential judicial connection. The agents straightened in their chairs. Judge Richard Harmon of Suffolk County has presided over 7 cases in the past year where defendants potentially connected to our investigation were given unusually harsh sentences despite questionable evidence, Director Cho explained, sliding a file across the table. Meanwhile, 3 cases involving individuals we suspect are higher in the organization were dismissed by the same judge on procedural grounds. Maya opened the file, scanning the contents. You think he's compromised? We don't make accusations without evidence, Director Cho replied carefully, but the pattern warrants investigation. This could explain why our previous attempts to build cases have fallen apart in court. Statistical anomalies don't happen by accident, Derek muttered, reviewing the case summaries. Which is why we're expanding your operation, the director continued. Agent Washington, you'll lead the judicial angle. Your background in behavioral analysis makes you ideal for this role. Maya nodded, already formulating an approach. I'll need to observe him in court, establish his patterns of behavior. Proceed with extreme caution, Director Cho warned. If a sitting judge is involved in obstruction or corruption, the political fallout could be explosive. We need ironclad evidence. Over the following months, Maya became a regular presence in Courtroom 12B, an unremarkable face in the gallery taking notes that appeared to be for law school studies. She observed Judge Harmon's temperament, his treatment of defendants based on race and class, his interactions with certain attorneys, and his rulings that seemed to follow a disturbing pattern. He's definitely showing bias, Maya reported during a secure briefing. But proving corruption versus ingrained prejudice is challenging. We need a direct connection. The breakthrough came unexpectedly through financial analysis. A series of deposits into an offshore account linked to a trust benefiting Judge Harmon's grandchildren corresponded precisely with rulings favorable to what they now knew was an organized car theft and money laundering operation. The payments are disguised as investment returns, explained their financial analyst, but the timing is too perfect to be coincidental. Then came the case of Darryl Jenkins, a young man arrested for car theft despite substantial evidence pointing to his innocence. His only misfortune was being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and fitting the profile that made him an easy scapegoat. They're setting him up to take the fall for multiple thefts, Maya concluded after reviewing the evidence. His public defender has built a solid case for dismissal, but based on Harmon's pattern, he'll bury the kid, Derek finished grimly. Can we move on Harmon now? Director Cho shook her head. We need to catch him in the act. His connection to the organization is still circumstantial. If we move too soon, the whole operation might scatter. Darryl Jenkins could face years for crimes he didn't commit, Maya argued. We can't let that happen. Then don't, Director Cho replied. But remember, you're walking a fine line. If Harmon realizes he's under investigation, everything we've built could collapse. Maya spent hours reviewing the Jenkins case, meeting discreetly with Lisa Chen, the overworked but dedicated public defender. Without revealing the full scope of the investigation, Maya provided guidance on which evidentiary issues to focus on. Something feels off about this case, Lisa admitted during one of their meetings in a busy coffee shop. The evidence is contradictory, the witness statements have inconsistencies, and the prosecutor is pushing unusually hard for such a routine case. Trust your instincts, Maya advised. And keep building your case on the procedural violations. Document everything, no matter how minor it seems. As the court date approached, Maya and her team monitored communications between Judge Harmon and several known associates of the criminal organization. A phone call the night before Darryl's hearing confirmed their suspicions. We need to move, Maya told Director Cho after playing the recording of the judge assuring someone that he would handle the Jenkins situation permanently. Agreed, the director replied after a moment's consideration. But we do this by the book. No grandstanding, no unnecessary risks. If you can prevent a miscarriage of justice while securing evidence of Harmon's corruption, you have my authorization. That morning, sitting in the courtroom as Judge Harmon mockingly dismissed Lisa Chen's valid legal arguments, Maya knew the moment had come to act. The gold badge in Maya's hand seemed to absorb all sound in the courtroom. Judge Harmon's face went through a rapid succession of emotions: shock, disbelief, and finally, a carefully constructed indignation. "Agent Washington," he said, recovering his composure, "whatever your business, this is highly irregular. If the Secret Service has interest in this case, the proper channels are exactly what I've utilized, Your Honor," Maya replied, her voice professional but unyielding. She approached the bench, placing a sealed envelope beside his gavel. "This is a federal warrant authorizing the immediate review of evidence in this case by our forensic team. Specifically, the chain of custody issues Ms. Chen has identified." Judge Harmon's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the envelope. "This is unprecedented interference in state court proceedings. Actually, it's standard procedure when federal crimes intersect with state cases," Maya corrected him. "Particularly when those federal crimes involve money laundering, wire fraud, and potentially, obstruction of justice." A murmur swept through the courtroom. The prosecutor, District Attorney William Reynolds, rose from his seat. "Your Honor, the Commonwealth objects to this intrusion. Agent Washington has no standing in these proceedings." Maya turned slightly, acknowledging him with a nod. District Attorney Reynolds: "I believe you received notification from the U.S. Attorney's Office this morning regarding our investigation. If not, I'm sure they'll be reaching out momentarily." Reynolds paled, checking his phone where, indeed, several missed calls from the federal prosecutor's office awaited his attention. Judge Harmon opened the envelope, scanning its contents with increasing alarm. "This court will take a 30-minute recess," he announced abruptly, rising from the bench. "Counsel for both sides, in my chambers. Now." As the judge retreated, Maya caught Lisa Chen's questioning glance and gave her a subtle nod of reassurance. The bailiff approached, uncertain about how to handle this disruption to normal procedure. "Agent Washington, the judge has requested your presence as well," he said, confusion evident in his voice. Inside the judge's chambers, the atmosphere was charged with tension. Judge Harmon took his seat behind an imposing mahogany desk adorned with legal tomes and family photographs that now seemed like props in an elaborate performance. "Agent Washington, I don't know what game you're playing, but this is judicial harassment," he began, his earlier shock hardening into hostility. "I've served on this bench for 30 years with an impeccable record." "I'm not playing games, Your Honor," Maya replied calmly, placing a second file on his desk. "This contains documentation of 17 cases over the past 24 months where your rulings showed statistical anomalies that correlate directly with financial transactions benefiting your family trust in the Cayman Islands." The district attorney's expression shifted from confusion to horror. "Judge, what is she talking about?" "Nonsense and speculation," Harmon snapped, though he made no move to open the file. "This is a transparent attempt to intimidate this court on behalf of a guilty defendant." "Mr. Jenkins isn't guilty," Maya stated flatly. "And we both know it. He's a convenient scapegoat for a theft ring that operates with protection from officials at multiple levels of the justice system." Lisa Chen, who had been listening intently, finally spoke. "Is this related to the missing evidence I've been trying to access? The surveillance footage that supposedly malfunctioned from the parking garage where the Lexus was stolen?" "The very same," Maya confirmed. "Footage that wasn't actually corrupted, just deliberately misplaced." She turned back to Judge Harmon. "Footage that clearly shows another individual stealing the vehicle in question while Mr. Jenkins was 3 miles away at his night shift job, as his alibi states." Judge Harmon's face darkened. "These are serious accusations being made without proper procedure. I could have you held in contempt." "You could," Maya acknowledged, "but that would further complicate the federal investigation that's already in motion." "Judge Harmon, I'm not here to create a spectacle. I'm offering you a chance to correct a miscarriage of justice before additional charges become necessary." The district attorney, now visibly uncomfortable, cleared his throat. If exculpatory evidence has been withheld, the Commonwealth has a legal obligation to review it. How convenient that you've suddenly developed an interest in justice, Reynolds, Lisa remarked sharply. After denying my discovery requests for weeks. Judge Harmon's expression hardened as he realized his position was deteriorating. I want to speak with Agent Washington alone. That would be inadvisable, Maya replied. Any conversation we have should include all parties present. Then I'm recessing this case pending review by the Judicial Conduct Board, Harmon declared, standing abruptly. This entire proceeding is now suspect due to federal interference. Maya remained calm. Recessing is your prerogative, Your Honor. But I should mention that as we speak, additional agents are executing search warrants at 7 locations connected to this investigation, including the office of Stanley Harmon. The judge froze. My son. What does my son have to do with any of this? Your son's real estate development company has been used to launder proceeds from the auto theft ring, Maya explained quietly. The question that remains is whether he involved you knowingly, or whether he abused your position without your knowledge. For the first time, genuine fear replaced the judge's arrogance. This is absurd. Stanley runs a legitimate business. Then he has nothing to worry about, Maya replied. But Mr. Jenkins shouldn't spend another day in custody for a crime he didn't commit while we sort this out. Lisa Chen seized the moment. I renew my motion to dismiss all charges against my client, Your Honor. Or at minimum, to release him on his own recognizance pending this investigation. Judge Harmon looked cornered, his eyes darting between the faces surrounding him. The carefully constructed world ere his word was law was crumbling around him. After a long moment, he sank back into his chair. The charges against Jenkins are dismissed, he muttered, then added with a flash of defiance, without prejudice. The Commonwealth may refile if this federal fishing expedition turns up nothing. Thank you, Your Honor, Maya said professionally. The Secret Service appreciates your cooperation. As they filed out of the chambers, Lisa Chen caught Maya's arm. Who are you, really? And why did you get involved in this case? Maya smiled slightly. Just someone who believes the system should work equally for everyone. Mr. Jenkins got caught in something much bigger than him, and correcting that injustice is part of my job. Back in the courtroom, the dismissal was announced to an astonished gallery. Darryl Jenkins, who had resigned himself to years behind bars, watched in disbelief as the bailiff removed his handcuffs. Judge Harmon's gavel fell with noticeably less authority than before. As the proceedings concluded, he avoided Maya's gaze, quickly exiting through his private door where, unknown to him, another agent waited to continue the conversation about his son's activities and his own financial decisions. 3 months later, Maya Washington stood at the podium of a press conference alongside the U.S. Attorney and Director Cho as they announced the results of Operation Clear Docket, an investigation that had uncovered corruption across multiple levels of the justice system. In Suffolk County. Today's indictments include 2 judges, a senior prosecutor, 4 police detectives, and 12 members of an organized criminal enterprise that exploited vulnerable individuals while undermining the integrity of our courts, the U.S. Attorney announced to the assembled reporters. This case represents one of the most significant judicial corruption investigations in the Commonwealth's history. Maya's testimony had been crucial in connecting the financial evidence to specific court cases where justice had been perverted. Judge Harmon, facing multiple federal charges, had eventually cooperated, providing information about others involved in the scheme. Away from the cameras and microphones, in a small coffee shop across town, Maya sat across from Darryl Jenkins and Lisa Chen. I still can't believe it, Darryl said, shaking his head. If you hadn't been there that day I'd be serving 10 years for something I didn't do. The system failed you, Maya acknowledged, but it wasn't just you. We identified 27 cases where innocent people were convicted to protect the real criminals. And those convictions are being reviewed now, Lisa added. She looked tired but satisfied, having thrown herself into helping the wrongfully convicted after the scandal broke. 6 have already been overturned. The new district attorney has established a special unit to handle the rest. Darryl stared into his coffee. My mom always told me to believe in justice, even when it didn't seem to believe in me. I almost lost that faith. Your mother was right, Maya said gently. Justice isn't perfect. It's built and maintained by imperfect people. Sometimes it breaks down. But that doesn't mean we stop working to make it better. Is that why you became a Secret Service agent? Lisa asked curiously. To fix broken systems. Maya smiled, remembering her own journey. I became an agent because I wanted to protect people from threats they couldn't see coming. Financial crimes, corruption, they don't make headlines like other dangers, but they destroy lives just the same. Well, I'm going to finish school now, Darryl announced with newfound determination. Maybe even study law someday. Someone needs to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to others. The world needs more people with that mindset, Maya agreed. As they parted ways, Lisa lingered for a moment. You know, when you first spoke up in that courtroom, the look on Harmon's face when you showed your badge, I'll never forget it. All that power and privilege, suddenly confronted by someone he'd completely underestimated. People like Harmon expect to be challenged by people who look and think like them, Maya reflected. It never occurs to them that justice might come from someone they've been programmed to dismiss. Back at her office later that day, Maya finished filing her final report on the case. Director Cho stopped by her desk. Headquarters called. They're impressed with how you handled the Suffolk County operation. There's talk about promoting you to lead the new Judicial Integrity Task Force they're forming. Maya looked up, surprised. A new task force? Your case exposed a vulnerability in our system that no one was specifically monitoring, the director explained. The Attorney General wants a dedicated unit to investigate patterns of judicial corruption nationwide, using the methodology you developed here. I'd be honored, Maya replied, thinking about Darryl Jenkins and others like him whose lives had been casually disrupted by corruption. There's so much work to be done. That's what makes you the right person for it, Director Cho said with a rare smile. You never forget that behind every case file is a real person whose life hangs in the balance. As Maya left the office that evening, she passed the Suffolk County Courthouse, now undergoing its own kind of rehabilitation as new judges were appointed and procedures reformed. She remembered the moment when Judge Harmon's laughter had died in his throat, the instant when power recognized it was not, in fact, absolute. Real change, she had learned, often began in such moments when those who believed themselves beyond accountability suddenly discovered otherwise. It wasn't about the badge, impressive as it might be. It was about the unwavering commitment to justice that the badge represented. For Maya Washington, that commitment had never wavered, not even when facing the most powerful figures in the system. And in that steadfastness, she had found her true purpose. All rise for the Honorable Judge Maya Washington. 5 years after the events that had shaken Suffolk County's judicial system to its core, Maya stood at a different threshold. After her successful leadership of the Judicial Integrity Task Force had resulted in similar investigations across 7 states, she had made an unexpected decision, accepting an appointment to fill a vacant federal judgeship. As she donned the black robes for the first time, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The promotion she had declined at the Secret Service, the difficult conversations with Director Cho about where she could make the greatest difference, and finally, the realization that sometimes, changing a system required working from within. Her first day on the bench, she looked out at the diverse faces filling her courtroom: lawyers, defendants, families, observers, and felt the weight of the responsibility she had accepted. You don't have to do this, her former partner Derek had told her when she announced her decision. You've already changed things from the outside. And now I need to help secure those changes from the inside, she had replied. Someone needs to ensure the door stays open for others. As the day's cases proceeded, Maya maintained the professional demeanor expected of a federal judge, but she approached each matter with the same attention to detail and commitment to fairness that had guided her investigative work. When a young public defender presented a motion that the prosecutor attempted to dismiss with procedural objections, Maya listened fully to both sides before ruling. "The defense's motion is well-founded in both law and fact," she declared. Motion granted. The slight look of surprise on the public defender's face, the momentary disbelief at being heard, fully reminded Maya of why she had accepted this position in her chambers that evening. As she reviewed cases for the following day, a framed newspaper headline hung on the wall: "Operation Clear Docket Leads to Judicial Reforms." It served as a daily reminder of where she had begun and what remained to be accomplished. Justice was not a destination, Maya had come to understand, but a continuous journey requiring vigilance, courage, and compassion. The system would never be perfect, but through the dedicated efforts of those committed to its highest ideals, it could become more fair, more accessible, and more worthy of the trust placed in it by people like Darryl Jenkins, who had indeed gone on to law school and now worked in the public defender's office. As Judge Maya Washington prepared for another day of upholding the principles she had once defended with a badge, she understood that while titles and positions might change, the core mission remained the same: to ensure that justice was never just a word, but a living reality, especially for those whom society had conditioned to expect less. In that commitment, she had found her truest purpose. And in living that purpose every day, she hoped to inspire others to find theirs as well.